you very much, Bongi. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sanibonani.
Hello.
Dumelang.
Ahe.
Goeiemorgen.
More.
Ndimachironi. Molweni.
Away, mama.
Maqobokazana amahle.
Nkosi kakhulu.
Agcweleyo. Nigalelekile. That last part of my greeting is especially for the women and young ladies who have filled this room with grace and honor. You are the reason we gather here today. Allow me to extend my heartfelt appreciation to the organizers and hosts of this gathering. Ms. Bongi Legwase, Mr. Phineas Sibanyoni, Mr. Richard Sitole, and Mr. Alan Sinclair. And to my fellow speakers, to Constable Sambo and Ms. Nomsa Kuzwayo. It's a privilege to share this platform with you. Good morning once again, and thank you for this very momentous occasion. We say, Aluta continua, Victoria Asceta. And that is to signify the commitment to the ongoing struggle with the belief that victory is certain and ultimately attainable. This is a reminder of our ongoing commitment to the liberation and advancement of women. It is truly my great honor to be here today and to be reflecting on one of the subjects that are of importance to me, and that is women in the workplace. I am especially grateful to the Ditsong National Museum for not only making this event possible, but importantly for recognizing that the struggle continues. Every year in August, our country pauses to reflect on the courage of women who marched before us. In 1956, over 20,000 women marched to the Union buildings. They stood not only against unjust past laws, but against the idea that women should be silent, submissive, and invisible. 69 years later, their courage calls out to us. What will we do with the legacy they've left? We celebrate their defiance, but we must also admit their struggle is not over. Women are still not fully liberated. So we ask, why do systemic inequalities persist? Why are women still being left out of the decision-making spaces? Why does society expect women to carry the world while rewarding them the least? Despite the formal independence, systemic, social, economic, and political inequalities still prevail. So I'd like us to reflect on these questions, because until we answer them, true liberation remains incomplete. When we look at women in the workplace, the evidence is clear. There are still barriers limiting women. Allow me to highlight some areas where challenges remain. The first is on systemic leadership barriers that are caused by patriarchal societies or patriarchal structures. Our society still asks questions like, are we ready for a woman president? Let's think about that for a second. Are we ready for a woman president? No one ever asked, are we ready for a man president? And why is that? Because patriarchy assumes that men belong in leadership naturally without having to prove themselves, while women must bear the burden of proving themselves over and over. This mindset filters into boardrooms, into parliaments, into media houses, and even in our own homes. Leadership is still imagined as a masculine trait. This damages the principles of democracy because it tells the majority of the population that you can participate, but only to a certain point. South Africa is still struggling to get gendered representation in its parliament and throughout all political parties in the assembly. When we look at other countries in the continent, in Nigeria, it is only this year that a legislative push is being seen to enhance women's representation in the national and state houses of assembly. In Rwanda, which is exemplary of women's representation, over 60% of their participation in the National Assembly is of and by women. So, in order not to perpetuate the historical injustices and the culture of masculine leadership, we must rid of patriarchy as the center of all structures, because it poses barriers for women to rightfully lead. And I would like to emphasize that we're not just talking about numbers for the sake of numbers. We're not talking about token appointments when we're still in a male-dominated system. To be boastful and say there are so many women in the boardroom, but are they decision makers? Are they capable of meaningful change? Or are they still treated as a minority? This means acting on our constitutional requirements as South Africa to pursue equality and uplift women into leadership positions. The second challenge posed towards women in the workplace is the gender pay gap and unequal pay. Women earn 20.1% less than men on an hourly basis and 32.5% less on a monthly basis. The gender pay gap persists across various sectors and occupations. Furthermore, is the crisis of limited job opportunities. Women make up only 47.3% of the formally employed workforce. And even when qualifications and experience are the same, women are paid less. And where women are employed, many are confined to roles that society labels as feminine: caregiving, domestic work, administration, HR, jobs that are essential yet undervalued and underpaid. The third challenge is underrepresentation in leadership. Women hold only 42% of senior management roles and 39% of CEO positions. And this is highlighting the dire need for greater representation in leadership. So often companies will bring out their reports and say, we have over 50% of women employed in our company. And they use these metrics as a way to boast about how diverse and equal their employment structure is. But if you look deeper into those numbers and ask, how many of those women are in senior management positions? How many of those women are CEOs? And there you will find the lack of women's representation in leadership. The fourth challenge is skills, education, digital access, and access to finance. Several women still today are excluded from opportunities in upskilling, training, and digital participation, or the fourth industrial revolution. Digital exclusion is the new frontier of inequality. Not only is there limited access to digital skills and training, but research further shows that technologies are also biased towards women, particularly of Black women, because the technologies in the AI are predominantly developed by Western men who lack Africa's context. This hinders women's participation not only in the workplace, but within society and in the community. And so, too often, women are educated, and yet they remain unemployed or unemployable due to the systemic barriers and lack of access to skills, training, and development. The statistics are sobering. 35% of women are unemployed compared to a 32% of men, and with Black women bearing the heaviest burden. Furthermore, women still bear limitations and barriers in accessing finance. There still remains a disproportionate bias to how banks in South Africa support businesses owned by women. The fifth challenge is work-life balance. Gender perspectives of how work-life balance varies within different arguments are present. However, the uncontested reality is that women continue to shoulder a disproportionate burden of unpaid care responsibilities, limiting their participation in the formal labor market and affecting their career advancement. The last challenge is of history and cultural recognition. History is like a mirror which reflects itself back to you. You cannot select which parts of the mirror you want to see when you are looking into it. It reflects back exactly what stands before it. And like the mirror, history reflects our stories, whether good or bad. It's their lessons which bring forth our victory in the present. History is the reason we are all gathered here today. But too often, women's contributions to history remain untold, erased, edited, or sidelined. I think back to a visit I made to Suzhou in China last year, a city that is rich with heritage museums safeguarding their intangible cultural heritage. And its protection and inheritance work of that heritage is striking. And I was marveled by how seriously they take their intangible cultural heritage. I'm reminded of it as I stand here today, in our own need to preserve our history and tell it without embellishments. That preserving of women's legacies, our untold stories, is essential in shaping an inclusive future, to write women back into the narrative. So I was very pleased to learn that even this museum is installing a Woman in the Liberation Struggle exhibition. Because a few days ago when I was walking around these halls, I was asking myself, but where is the tribute to women? Where are women acknowledged in this museum? We must remember that South Africa's society is of chronic insecurity. And this is due to the legacies of wars, of colonialism and apartheid. So we must not only be a commemorative society, but also a learning society. And there is no better teacher than history itself. So then we ask, where do we go from here? We cannot name these challenges without also asking, what can be done? And despite these challenges, there are efforts, some that are underway and some which still need to be adopted, to promote gender equality, equity, and support women in the workplace. And these initiatives include, firstly, flexible work arrangements, where companies are offering flexible work options such as remote work, otherwise known as working from home, flexible hours to support work-life balance and addressing unpaid care responsibilities. The second is training and development programs that are focused on leadership skills, negotiation techniques, and career advancement that are being implemented to empower women. Thirdly is mentorship, where programs pairing women with experienced leaders are provided to aid their professional and personal development. The fourth is promoting equal pay, representation, and empowerment, where we've seen some implementing equal pay for equal work and addressing occupational segregation. Encouraging women's participation in leadership roles and promoting diversity. And lastly, legislative frameworks, where South African employment laws such as the Employment Equity Act aim to promote equality and prevent discrimination. However, some legislation is still lagging. It was only this year and this month that South Africa's judiciary adopted a sexual harassment policy. And this was only due to the aftermath of the tribunal, which was probing allegations of a senior judge president for harassing a junior secretary at the Makanda High Court. So we need to be preemptive and preventative in our legislative frameworks, and not just reactive. Friends, colleagues, sisters, the challenges are real, but so is the resilience of women. Women in the workplace are not asking for handouts. We are demanding recognition, access, equity, and justice. Beyond the policies and the statistics, there is something deeper at stake. I think of the young women I've mentored who tell me, I'm qualified, but no one takes me seriously. I think of the mothers that are forced to choose between attending a board meeting and being there for their child's school event. I think of women entrepreneurs who pour their hearts into businesses, but cannot access funding because banks don't see them as credible. These are stories, not statistics. These are lived realities, and they remind us that when women are excluded, entire societies lose out. Imagine for a moment a South Africa where women are fully empowered, where salaries reflect value, not masculinity, where leadership reflects the population and not patriarchy, where technology is equally accessible for girls and boys in rural schools as well as urban centers, where unpaid care work is shared fairly, recognized and valued, where history honors women and doesn't hide them. That vision is possible, but it requires all of us, men and women, to commit to the struggle. So my call to action, if you ask, so what must we do? Firstly, we need to challenge patriarchy daily. At work, at home, in politics, we must call out bias. We must name discrimination. And we must demand inclusion. Secondly, we must pay women fairly. Employers must conduct gender pay audits and correct inequities. Third, we must invest in women's skills, especially in technology and leadership. Fourth, we must support women entrepreneurs. Create funding streams that don't require impossible collateral or biased gatekeepers. And fifth, we must share the care. Men must step up in households. Care work is not woman's work. It is human work. And last, we must preserve women's history. Build museums, write books, document stories, so that future generations inherit the rich truth of our country. And as I close, I leave us with this reflection. The struggle for women's liberation is not an event that we commemorate once a year in August. It is a daily act of courage, persistence, and solidarity. True freedom will not be realized until women everywhere, in boardrooms, in classrooms, newsrooms, in parliaments and homes, are free to thrive without barriers. Today, almost 7 decades later, the rock still stands, but it is not unshaken. It carries the cracks of inequality, of exploitation, of harassment, of exclusion. And yet, it also carries the seeds of resilience, of innovation and power. The struggle continues, but so does our victory. Let us not relegate August to slogans and flowers. Let us make it a month of action, and let that action extend into every other day of the year. Let us continue the march that was started by those who came before us. Let us continue to build workplaces where women are not only present, but powerful and thrive. And may we never forget that the liberation of women is not just women's work. It is the unfinished business of humanity itself. Thank you.
Thank you for your beautiful message. Before you sit, let us see if we have any questions from the floor. Do we have questions? Please proceed.
Thank you for your presentation, ma'am. I have 2 questions for you. That is what my interest. My name is Abraham, but I'll start with this one, which most of the time confuses me. What is your take, or have you, in your research as a researcher, gone deeper into how can you mentalize women to believe in women leadership? Because now it's something like patriarchal, but as you have seen it most of the time, women, they don't like women leadership. Not most of the time, but sometimes, because of certain reasons, young girls, they don't want a woman boss because of this and that. And the second one, that emanates from you highlighting about the culture and history and the meaning. Tell me, how a modern woman, today's woman, if you have to advise, can navigate between these contagious issues, because culture, religion, gender, feminism, marriage, workplace, leadership, they are all put in one basket, but as a woman you are one entity and you have to deal with all those aspects. You want to get married, you want leadership, you want to be in a certain religion, you want to conform to culture. Culture doesn't allow you here. So maybe you can try to explain how you will have this different mask when you are in a boardroom, when you are at home, when you are in church. That is the challenge I was doing.
Thank you very much. Andrew, you said your name is?
Abraham.
Abraham, thank you so much. Okay, so thanks for the questions, really good reflections. To the first question on women who don't want women in leadership and why, I think that's a very broad assumption that is always drawn to almost undermine a woman who is in a place of leadership. And the problem that is evident between women who are in senior roles, leading women in junior roles, is that they believe that they need to carry on with the masculine style of leadership or the patriarchal style of leadership instead of embracing the feminine style of leadership. So the mistake that some women in leadership make is that they assume the masculine role. So they undermine their own principles and try to act like the man that was there before them. And that perpetuates the previous attitudes and the workplace culture that was there before. But if we give women the opportunity to realize how fundamental it is to implement their own leadership styles, whether or however feminine they are, to have a nurturing leadership style, then we will find less contrast between women leading women in the workplace. I am led by a woman in my workplace and I love it, I embrace it. That is not to negate that I haven't been led by women who tried to bring me down. But you realize that they were trying to lead in a masculine nature. But where women recognize their power in femininity, in softness, you don't have to raise your voice to be strong. You can speak and dare the command that you're trying to put across. So I think it's something that is inherent on the patriarchal system that I spoke about and women who try to lead with masculinity. And as soon as they can lead in their feminine style, we can have a much more nuanced, a much more holistic and harmonized relationship between women in the workplace, amongst women in the workplace. Then to your second question of a modern woman who you said is one entity.
No, I was saying.
She has to adopt all these different roles.
Remember, we've got our mothers, our grandmothers. They were living a certain kind of a lifestyle, and then we have you who are in leadership, who are working, who are modern, who are participating in economy. But still, you still want marriage. You still want to be submissive. You still want that. And then that really creates a confusion. I can see a lot of divorce. Sometimes even men feel like you want to be a husband now. You want to take the boardroom to the bedroom. Such issues. I just want you to get a clarity. If you have to advise a young lady now to say, this is your lane. This is you have to be here. You have to be here. You have to be here. Because it's really confusing. Not just to waste your time. There was a politician who used to lead NFP. I think she's normal. I once hear a program, Norma Gwazamsi. Yeah, I once hear a program where she was advising young women that I am the minister, I am the leader, and I'm at home, I'm like this and this and this. So just to go in the cycle of the modern day woman. This is what I wanted the clarity about.
Thank you. Can I ask you a question before I answer that? Do you find that it's a limiting position for women?
To engage you, I think it's confusing to certain modern day women.
Is it confusing to men or women?
Hence, I said sometimes most of the divorces, if you go into the divorces, you find that there are real issues that cannot be resolved because of your upper status or your leadership. Even your family, sometimes they will feel that because you are here, even when you try to reason, they think, oh, because you think you are educated, you think that you own this and that and that. So I was just saying, just in the simplest terms, if you have to advise just a young lady today to say, you have made it in a corporate, I can see, I hear your CV, but this is how I am when I'm at home, this is how I am when I'm in church, this is how, because you don't want to step on the toes and offend people, because as black people, we always like to take the character, read you from there to there.
Thank you. Thank you, Abraham.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's just the issue of feminism, also culture, also religion. This one not dominating that other one. I don't know whether I'm...
Yes, no. That's a very important question, and as you pointed out, it's very complex. And I think one thing we need to remember is that no being is one thing. Everyone has layers, and everyone is a different person with different groups that they engage with. I don't engage the same way with my friends as I do with my colleagues, but that doesn't stop me from being a friend and a leader in the workplace. And when you go home, you take on another role that's supportive of your family. And when you go to church, you explore your spirituality and your peace and your sense of being. So I think if I had to advise a young woman, I think you need to be centered in yourself. If you understand who you are, you won't be troubled by the contrast that society constantly expects to find in young women. We are all complex beings, we change every day, but we become better once we start to learn our inner selves, once we are self-aware. So I think what you're asking is about self-awareness and how to navigate each of the relationships that we exist in without detrimenting those relationships and without compromising ourselves. So I wouldn't say that a woman is one thing and one thing only, that she can only be someone in the boardroom, or she can only be someone in church, or she can only be someone with her family. She's all these different things because women are dynamic, they're incredible, and so are men. You're not the same person as a man that you are with your friends, as you are when you go to church, as you are when you go to the office. Your personalities will shift for the environment that it requires. So why do we expect women to be one thing in every situation that they go to? So I think we need to embrace those different qualities that women have and support them. So I understand the growing rate of divorces, and it also speaks to the changing culture that we have in society currently. And that's also a question that men need to look into themselves. It's not only a woman's responsibility, but how do we get men to understand the changing nature of women and to embrace it without speaking down on it or questioning, why is she now leading more than I can? We need to be supportive of each other because we exist in the same place where we must have harmony and peace in the homes that we have, in our workplaces. We don't exist in silos. So I hope I've answered your question and I've tried to capture that complexity that you've raised. But to that, I think we need to embrace those different natures, those different qualities, and how they're all interconnected and interlinked. I see there's another question coming up. Thank you, Abraham. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. My name is Bongiwe Tutu. I want to add on what you are saying. Women should be centered. I mean, they should find what you said, self-awareness. But I want to add something like balancing your life, because what you have said is taking me back 5 years back when I was a shop steward. So I was carried away. You know, as a human being, sometimes we are carried away. I will tell you the advice I got it from a woman who is my wife. She said to a comrade, you are not in your boardroom. Come back home. Then I realized that sometimes people are carried away. You know, there's this political party is filled with youth. If there's a young lady who is doing this toy and all those things and feminism, and when she comes back home and not trying to ground herself that now I'm home, you know, now I'm no longer in a toy ground, just like me, because I used to come back boiling, you know, and you could hear the voice, hey, why this thing is not happening? Why this? And I say, hey, comrade, relax, relax. So I want to say to fellow comrades who are ladies, let us ground us back. When you come back from wherever activities that you were doing, when you come back home, relax, find yourself, be calm, because it can create enmities. I mean, can create some trouble within. But when you know how to balance your lifestyle, it's gonna be well. Whether you are in church, whether you are in a boardroom, whether it's gonna be well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think that really sums it up very well. Thank you for reflecting on your experience with that. It's very important to realize that, and the part of grounding yourself is also about finding a good circle of people that surround you, because you are the company that you keep. The people you keep around you reflect something about who you are, and they also influence the person that you are. So as you rightfully said, if you have a good partner, when you get home and you bring work home, they will remind you, you're home now, so you can relax. But if that was a bad partner, they will give you, you know, some other attitude, and that's then the result of divorce, you know, because we're contrasting and we're constantly trying to make relationships that don't serve us to serve us. So let's be intentional in the relationships that we have and the circles that we keep. And then we are completely centered and always self-aware and grounded. Thank you. I think if there's any no more questions, then
All right, no more questions.
thank you so much.
Thank you again for your message. I hope you still remember that we have been called to action. So our